Much more positive, and only positive, is an insect which all of you know and which all of us love, the bee, the nahla, to which Surah 16 refers. And I think it is the animal that is praised most eloquently by the Quran. Even the word awha, Allah, is used, awha, a word which is usually restricted to the inspiration of the Prophet. It is a bee who brings you drinks of different colors and good for their health. This Quranic praise of the bee has always given this animal a very special place, so much so that even Al-Maqrizi, the great Egyptian historian, has written a special treatise about the bee. And a beautiful legend is found, I don't know if in the Arab world, but I know it from Turkey, from the poetry of Yunus Emre in the 14th century, and from Sindh in southern Pakistan, where it formed the topic of a lovely ballad. One day, the Prophet had some guests, and he had nothing to offer them with the dry bread. So a bee came and asked him to send Hazrat Ali with him, and the bee led Ali ibn Abi Talib to a tree where the beehive was. He took the honey and they went back, and everyone was amazed that this strange stuff was so sweet and so tasty. And the Prophet asked the bee, "How come this is so beautiful?" And the bee said, "You see, when we collect the fruit juice and we make it into honey, then we recite all the time the salawat al-sharifa over you, and by the salawat al-sharifa the honey becomes sweet." It's a beautiful story, and of course the Sindhi poet clothes his ballad with the admonition to all the Muslims, and especially the children, never to forget the salawat al-sharifa, so that they also become as sweet as honey. And the humming of the bee is, of course, like the murmuring of a dhikr. The bee, as you know, helped a big queen, which was called Ya'sub, and Ya'sub is explained in the Nahj al-Balagha that it is the mightiest Lord, the one who rules people's affairs. The bees helped Ali in battle, so he is also called the Lord of the Bees. But the question of the Ya'sub is very interesting, because it's not only in the Islamic world that the leader of the bees, or the queen, has been considered to be a male leader before one knew it exactly. In Europe, up to the 17th century, the Ya'sub was also considered a male creature. It's an interesting parallel in development. And for the Sufis, the Pir, the Murshid, is the one who teaches the disciple the sweetness of the divine remembrance, and he is like the Ya'sub, like the great bee who brings happiness and beauty into one's life. Even mankind as such can be compared to a bee, namely a normal human being is, or should be, sweet, should produce sweetness, and should produce something useful, namely the wax. This is some thing that especially occurs in the works of Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, the great Sufi poet. But as much as we love the bees, and the study of bees is even today one of the central themes of some scholars in Germany, as much as we love the bee, as much do we hate her distant cousin, the wasp. Saadi, in the 13th century in Shiraz, says with full right, "True, a tyrant is just like a wasp, keeps you constantly in fear and dread. Wait until he's overcome one day. Then you will put your foot upon his head. The tyrant can never last, as little as can the wasp.